Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 2 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Holy cow! So, the last episode, which was the first one of this series, I think I talked for like an hour and 10 minutes about. I was just sucked into this world instantly and to these characters, especially Shinji, and just sucked into it. I think what really got me is that I'm watching a lot of very protagonist heavy shows. Like, I'm watching Attack on Titan, I think of Demon Slayer, I think of My Hero Academia, and in those series specifically, you have a call to action and you have a conflict arise, and the protagonists just kind of run headfirst into it, right? And they just instantly are like, yep, gonna save the world, let's do this, what can I do? And this is the first series I've watched in a while where the protagonist is like, no, I don't want to. I just got here. So Shinji is fascinating. He's in the last episode alone, we saw layers to his character already. There's stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about as the audience yet. There's this layer of mystery, this layer of tension. Gendo, his father, is interesting and shady, and these other women, Akagi and Masato, they seem nice enough, and then you have Rei, and it's just basically our protagonist was guilt-tripped into getting into this mech to go fight a monster that he knows nothing about. What? So, there was a lot of crazy stuff go down in the first episode alone. It's so heavy 80s, 90s sci-fi. I am all here for it, but it seems less like a sci-fi and more like maybe a psychological series, because it just seems like it's getting at some thematic elements that I'm like, huh. So yeah, Whiteboard Kun had to come out. We had to do a whole thing about it. I don't know if that's going to be the norm with this series, but as far as first episodes go, I was like, I'm on board. Yeah, let's break this down. So we're starting episode 2 then. Unfamiliar ceilings. That's interesting. I'm like, I don't know if unfamiliar ceilings is referring to like a house, like you're unfamiliar with living with someone, maybe relating to Shinji and his father Gendo. Maybe that's it. I want to know more about Rei, because he's seen Rei in a vision, which makes me think that maybe Shinji has some kind of like psychic ability, and that's why he connects so instantly with his Evangelion, or Eva. And we haven't met the red-haired girl yet. We've not met her yet. It seemed from the opening like there was a big cast of characters, like this was a big ensemble piece, and I was like, okay. And I'm gonna try to pay attention to the OP as we go, because it looks like it's very much like there's just stuff everywhere, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, I liked the first episode a lot, and it got me on board with this series, and if we need to use Whiteboard Kun this episode to break stuff down, we will. If I think that I've got a good grasp on it, then we won't have to worry about it. So I'm so excited, y'all, though. This is gonna be fun. So let's not waste any more time, shall we? Let's just go ahead and dive right in and start this, shall we? So we are gonna start episode 2 of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and we are gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. I don't know why I thought I wouldn't need Whiteboard Kun. Oh my gosh. This show is so good so far. It has a lot of layers, and it does a lot of it's basically a lot of show and not tell. It gives you a lot of imagery, and it expects that you're going to break it down and that you're going to pull out a Whiteboard Kun and break down the imagery and get to know it. But Shinji is such a fascinating protagonist. He's so fascinating, and I feel like there is a driving force of why he's there, and he doesn't know why he's there. And we're getting more into what his character is defined by, and more into his character personality. So we're getting more into Masato, Pin, having a random pet penguin. Why not? Why not? And then getting into like some more politics, this world, how everything's set up, and Gendo is not letting on more than he knows. And God, what an estranged relationship between a father and a son. Just the scene in the elevator, that was probably one of the most fascinating scenes I think I've seen in a while, where there's just no dialogue. It was a look. It was a look, and it spoke volumes. It was that we're not going to talk about this. And oh my gosh. Ha! So there's a lot of interesting things going on with Shinji. And a lot of interesting things going on in this episode. And the idea, I'm going to call it The Beast, because the show itself calls it The Beast. I don't know why Netflix titled it Unfamiliar Ceilings. I guess because Shinji mentions it twice. But the actual title card says The Beast. So, and yeah, this Evangelion, whatever the hell it is, it's not a mech, right? Or is there some kind of like... I got major Akira vibes from this. I was like, okay, is there some like psychological... thing where we're talking about angels? Is there like some like demon, like psychological, like what are we doing? And it's fitting that the angels, their attacks look like a cross. So okay, going back to the angels thing, Angels 2.0, we still don't know much about the angels, right? We don't know much about them. There's going to be something about 15 years ago brought up that is going to come into play, but their attacks kind of look like a cross, which is very symbolic, and they seem organic. Their blood is blue, and I'm going to call it blood in quotation marks, is blue. And I don't think we've seen blood in this series already and it's red, so it's not like a censorship thing. It's just their blood is blue. It's not red. Like, so maybe it's like an alien life form. Maybe. Basically aliens, I don't know. Maybe it's an alien life form. Maybe it's supernatural. I don't know. It definitely does not seem like a mech. Does not seem like that. And it regenerates and grows and develops in different ways. And they talked about gaining intelligence in the last episode. It seems like it's some kind of organic life form, whether it's alien or supernatural or whatever. But, okay. Oh, man. And there's a big cast of characters, which we're only 2 episodes in. I feel like we've had a lot of stuff go down. So I'm going to skip the intro. I feel like that intro, I'm going to be dissecting it piece by piece this entire season, which is fine. I'm good with it, but it's different. It's interesting. Okay. So, let's see here. Okay. So we go back to this episode and start it. And so, ready, Shinji? Ready to fight this monster that you know nothing about? And this kid, I'm floored that Shinji's just like, I guess I was kind of just guilt-tripped into doing this so that a girl didn't die, but okay, guess I'll do this now. I'm amazed. He's like, yes, ma'am. And he's just like, okay, I read this manual. It didn't help me any, but okay. So release final safeties. All right. And if Evangelion unit lift off. I'm going to also do Masato in this. So let's talk about Masato up here. Masato, I am wondering, was she a pilot herself? Was she once a pilot of one of these EVAs? Was she? Because she seems to know a lot about the protocol. She knows like everything that needs to happen. So was she a pilot herself? Do the pilots, and I guess we'll make an EVA comment down there. Do the pilots have to be children? That's an interesting concept. Do the pilots themselves have to be kids? So I'm going to put the EVAs down here and what we learn maybe about this. Is there an age limit on the pilots? Because why would you specifically have children? And you can't really say it's because, oh, well, they're smaller framed. I mean, that's not true at all. You could have a bigger framed kid at all. So, and I don't know if age, if it's something to do with like maybe there's a psychological element to these EVAs. Like they're talking about like compatibility and synchronizing with them. And then the fluid that you get sapped into is like something to do with your neurological state. So maybe they need a child because of where their psychological state is, and the brainwaves can function easier with an EVA. I don't know, but it just feels like Masato was a pilot at one time because she knows exactly what to do, right? And she just basically gets this EVA unit ready for liftoff. And then Akagi says, just concentrate on walking and take a step. So, and they're all amazed that it works. They're like, oh my God, it actually worked. Great, it's walking. And he's just like, take a step. And he overthinks it. That's the thing. He overthinks it and it causes the unit to fall and crash. And he's like, oh, and then they tell him, they're like, pull it together, kid. And it's like, what else do you want him to do? He's trying. Our boy Shinji is trying, right? So I'm going to put Shinji right up here. God, I feel for Shinji, to be honest. I feel for him because he's just a teenage boy, right? And they're like, pull it together, kid. You should know how to do this, right? So, all right. So it seems like he's telepathically linked to the Eva. That seems like it's the case, right? Maybe, possibly. I'm sure that we'll get it. This series is slowly feeding us. It's like IV dripping us more information. We're only on episode 2, so I'm sure we're gonna find out more. And they're like, "Hurry, you need to get up." And in all fairness, in the reaction, I was like, "Quit yelling at him." But in all fairness, he did need to get up because he was about to get stepped on. But Shinji's like, he's got tears in his eyes. He's like, "I didn't want to do this." And so then the angel picks him up, and it tries to break his arm. And so in this thing, and it like bulks itself up, right? And God, like the veins on his arm and everything, and they tell him to stay calm. And they're like, it just feels like your arm's being hurt. That's terrifying. The idea that whatever the Eva feels, and that's why I think there's like a telepathically linked, whatever the Eva feels, you feel. That is terrifying. So if it crushes his arm, he feels like his arm's being broke, even if it's not. I feel like that would damage like your central nervous system, like your body's response to pain, things like that. I feel like, because they did make a mention later on, they asked if his central nervous system was damaged. And they're like, no. And they're like, oh, thank goodness. Just, wow, okay. And they're like, and at this point, they can't really do anything because the entire system is shutting down. Like it's breaking the system down. So they can't control anything on their end. And oh my gosh. And they said the left forearm damaged, circuit severed. And just that, the way that they animate it, like Shinji's face in red, it's just like, and his expression, he's just in pain. Oh my gosh. Like just, and he just throws him up against it, and he fires a laser, and he can't break loose, and it just keeps firing the laser like it's a battering ram against the actual front eye of the Eva. And yeah, it breaks through it and knocks him up against the wall. And just that whole sequence of the head falling, and it just looks like blood spurting out. It looks like blood, but it's the fluid that was inside of him. Ugh. And then they say the skull damage, the neurons, everything's disconnecting. It's like the pilot readings are lost. And then she screams Shinji's name, and then he wakes up in the hospital bed. And the whole hospital scene, like the animation in the show, the usage of color and lighting is gorgeous. Like the whole idea of the hospital, everything, the light filtering in, it's like pristine and white and minimalist, and it looks very heavenly and glowing. It's gorgeous, but it looks also kind of supernatural and creepy. It reminds me a lot of Akira. It's very, very, it's really well done. And I just love the idea of the radio playing, like just gently in the background. The radio playing in the background where you can barely hear it. Like that's so realistic. I love it. And then Shinji says, I don't recognize that ceiling. So Shinji establishing that he is no longer home. That he's in unfamiliar territory. He's no longer home. He's like, I don't recognize that ceiling. It's not home to me. Because he's in the hospital, right? Oh my gosh. So we cut from there to this UN headquarters, right? And they're picking up the pieces. They're picking up the pieces of the EVA unit, Unit 1. And it's just completely trashed. And man, this episode does a really good job of setting up. We start the episode with Shinji battling the angel and seemingly just being destroyed. And then it cuts to him being okay. And so we, the audience, are like, well, how'd he get out? Did somebody go rescue him? What happened? And then you see the crane picking up the head of the Eva, and you're like, okay, how did his head fall off? What happened there? And then at the end of the episode, we find out, and it's like, oh, okay. Interesting. It's kind of crazy. But then we have this board meeting, and it looked like a Simon Says game. Like the yellow, green, blue, and red. It looked like Simon Says, and you just like had to press the right button. But we have these 4 council members, and then Jindo and the other guy there. The angels have returned. It's all too sudden. Saying it's just like 15 years ago. Okay, so they've been gone for 15 years, supposedly. Okay. So this entire UN unit has been developing weaponry and stuff for 15 years in case the angels come back. And here we are, right? Calamity never warns before striking. Okay. This might also be considered a blessing. I love that the cinematography of this, they're all looking at Jindo. They're all looking at Shinji's father. Like their angle, the way that they're positioned, they're all looking directly at him. It's so fascinating. And all of them like are in a different light, and like they all have like big crooked noses, and they look almost caricaturish, right? This might also be considered a blessing. It means our previous investments are worthwhile. So the one guy that's bathed in like the mauve light here, he's suggesting like, well, it's a good thing the angels have come. We've spent all this money on this weaponry and this technology to defend the city. It would be such a waste if we never got to use it. Right? So we have that, and then we have That Remains to Be Seen. I felt like the guy whose voice actor was for the guy in blue with the crooked penguin nose, I felt like that was like Zeke's voice actor, like Dio's voice actor from JoJo and Attack on Titan. His voice actor seemed like it was him. But this was far back, so I doubt it. I don't know. I mean, JoJo's been around for a while, so maybe. If it is not unusual, if it is not useful, it is the same as wasted money. Indeed. So yeah, if you can't use it, then there's no point to it. Information regarding the angels is spreading throughout the public. I think that one line the guy just said about if it's not useful, then it's a waste of money. I wonder if Jindo is applying that same philosophy to Shinji, because it seems like Shinji, he's not worth anything if he's not useful. That seems like Jindo's philosophy with him. Not parent of the year, clearly. And so they're talking about the information around the angels is spreading amongst the public. Okay. We need a disinformation campaign. All right. So this unit here, they're thinking about propaganda to spread disinformation. So people are learning too much about the angels. They're like, we need to get some disinformation out there to like set everybody straight so that they'll be informed, but not really. Oh, okay. Nerves work must be carried out both properly and quickly. Okay. And then Jindo says those concerns are already being addressed, rest assured. This morning at Prime Minister's office in Tokyo too. Okay, so there's multiple Tokyos. Okay, so there are multiple Tokyos. I'm going to put this here. So we have Tokyo, we know we have Tokyo 2, and where everybody is at is Tokyo 3. Okay. Cool. This morning at the Prime Minister's office in Tokyo 2. I also like, for the record, we get to see these people watching with the nerve cups, and there's lipstick stains on the cups. It's such a cool little detail. There's like lipstick stains all over the paper cups. They didn't have to animate that, but somebody went through that cell and did little blotches of lipstick on each cup. That's a little detail that just, the 90s, we took our time with our animation. What can we do? The government claims UN forces Japan were deployed. They went with scenario B-22. Okay, I also like the TV station is BS7. I think that's pretty funny. I'm sure that that's just a coincidence, but... And so B-22. So we established that where Tokyo 3 is, where we have B-17 and we have B-22. Those are 2 locations that are pointed out in this episode, or scenarios. Okay. So yeah, no, it's Masato with the cups. Okay. Once again, the facts get buried. All right. Okay, so I like Masato. She pretty much is, she's very perceptive. She's perceptive of the media and how the government is controlling it. Okay. Because she's like, well, the TV stations, nobody's reporting the real facts. They're just burying it under the surface. And then Akagi says the public affairs office was ecstatic. They say they finally feel useful. So yeah, so the public affairs office finally gets to have a job. They're like, oh, we get to spread some disinformation. We finally get to do something. So they're in these suits, right? I don't know where they're at exactly, but they're in these suits, these nerve suits. And apparently it's hot because Masato is fanning herself. But they have like the little, like, they look like hazmat suits almost, or like astronaut suits. Interesting. What a bunch of optimists. I wonder, I think they're actually terrified. And they have good reason to be. So yeah, if this whole angel thing is real, then yeah, there's a reason to be scared. And then we cut back to the boardroom, and they're like, still, Ikari, can't you manage Nerve and the Evas better? It's like, we put you in charge of this project. We're not seeing the results that we want. What's up? And then they accuse him. They're like, first there was a Unit 00, and now Unit 01 needs repair after its debut. And at this point, we don't know that Shinji has beaten the angel. We don't know that yet. So for all we know, the angel got away, and it's just a bunch of damage. These bills could bankrupt a country. I hear you gave that toy to your own son. I like that. It's funny that the government is referring to this toy, the Evas, as a toy. It's funny that these government panels call it a toy. And they kind of get real snarky with Jindo, being like, oh, you gave this to your kid, huh? Just for him to go play with? Which was not the case. People, time, and money. You and your son seem to have an insatiable appetite for resources. I got really upset at this line because Shinji is not, like, the government here is tying Shinji to his father. And they are like the furthest from a cohesive relationship. Absolutely not. Like, Jindo looks at Shinji the wrong way and Shinji can't speak or even look back at him. Like, no, they're like the furthest thing from a duo. And this government official is just assuming that Shinji wanted to play in the robot and go out and battle the angel and that Jindo was just appeasing him. And Jindo doesn't defend his son or anything. He doesn't offer up any response to that, right? And this is not your only job, they say. And so we have the Human Instrumentality Project. That is your top priority. Okay, so with Jindo here, so with old Jindo is responsible for the Evas and Nerve. And he's also responsible for this human instrumentality. Okay. Project. Okay, and that's supposed to be his top priority. Honestly, instrumentality, they're an instrument and it's, you know, their mentality, so it's like a psychological thing. So it's like, are they grooming kids to be used for EVA pilots? Is that what this is? That he's in charge of this like project to groom these children to pilot these Gundams, essentially? I know they're not Gundams. And then I like that during this whole scene, like Jindo's big thing is like having the hands above the mouth, like in typical villain pose. Like Jindo this whole time looks like a villain in this episode. He looks just sinister in the weirdest of ways, but he's just sitting there with his, like, he's contemplating, and we don't get to see, it's really funny because we don't get to see his eyes, but then we kind of do beneath the shades. It's such a weird animation choice. And he says, indeed, that project is the only glimmer of light in this desperate situation. So apparently this instrumentality project is key to everything if the Evas and Nerve don't chalk up. Humanity's only hope. In any event, there can be no pushing back the project's timetable. Okay, so this project has a timetable. So it is considered the only hope, whatever that means. And it's on a timetable. So it has a deadline that needs to happen by. And it seems like it's separate from the Evas. So that's curious what in the world that is. Due to the angel's arrival, that's pushed things up. Your budget request will be considered. So basically, okay. So Jindo, he came there to do a budget request to meet with them. Probably being like, yeah, we got to rebuild these Evas and it's going to take some money. So if you guys could fork that over, money please. And that's why they're berating him. The council will take it from here. Good work, Ikari. So yeah, even though they just gave him like a talking to, they still tell him good job. And then this one guy says, Ikari, there's no turning back now. And then he disappears. And only after he disappears does Jindo say, I'm well aware. Humanity's time is running out. Interesting. What? So mysterious. So mysterious. I just, So the thing that kind of ticked me off in this is that we don't get any confirmation that he visits Shinji at all while he's in the hospital. As far as we know, he doesn't, because Masato comes and picks him up, and that's when he's seen in the elevator. Maybe he was coming to visit him at that time. Maybe he was coming to visit him. But he visits Rei, so... And then we cut back to Shinji looking out the window of the hospital. And it looks like it's in the mountains, so that's interesting. But the whole feeling of this scene is so... It's animated so well, but so chilling. There's no one in the hospital. There's no one in there. When he was back in his hospital room, it was bare, just like the bare minimum. There was nobody there, just this eerie radio sound. And here, there's nobody in the halls. He's by himself. Shinji is constantly alone. And he made reference in the last episode. He got sad. And then he made the comment that no one wants me. That's what he said in the last episode. No one wants me. And here in this hospital thing, he's all by himself, right? And so then he sees the gurney coming through. And the thing about this show is, there's a part of me that's like, did she really come through on the gurney? Was this real? Or is it a vision? Because this series is already giving you the vibes of not knowing exactly what's real and what's not real. It's interesting, but I'm pretty sure they wheeled her by. And it's that girl Rei again. So he sees her a number of times, and he just always sees him looking back at her, like with his eye like shimmering. But he's seen Rei on 3 occasions so far, right? And we see half his face. Well, no, it was in the shadows, but we see his eye come up. And then he just gets really sad. He's like, ah. And so that's interesting that he sees Rei and he just kind of grimaces about it. I guess because he doesn't know what to say, or he's like, he doesn't know what happened. So he's like, did I save her? What was the deal? He can't communicate. He's just very frustrated, right? He seems like he's frustrated because he can't communicate. Okay. All right, so then we go back to, I love all the, like, technology, like, all the stuff here. We got this, like, tanker going through, and I'm with Masato. Masato, the AC is humanity's greatest invention. As her and Akagi are traveling, and they have, like, the car phone that's built into the side, and there's 2 car phones built into the side dash. I love the technology in this series. It's so fun. And so Akagi says that Shinji's regained consciousness. And Masato says, what's his condition? And they say no external injuries, but his memory's a little bit jumbled. And then she says, was there any psychological contamination? So that's something maybe tied to the Evas. Psychological contamination. All right. And I'm guessing that psychological contamination is maybe why people don't sync up well to the Evas or continue to sync up well. And Akagi says, they say there's no risk of that. And she says, oh. Yeah, I'm not surprised. We threw him in the deep end. And then Akagi says, it's no wonder his cranial nerves took a lot of strain. And she says, his heart, don't you mean? So Masato the cranial nerves, all right, being linked to the heart. So I'm going to tie this down here to the Evas, because I'm guessing that the cranial nerves, like the brain, it's causing you to cyclically link up to the rest of the Eva to make it move and everything. So it is technically the heart of that creation of the Eva. The brain is the heart of it. And so if you have any kind of nerve damage and stuff to the brain, then you're not going to be able to function properly with the Eva. So technically your cranial nerves are the heart of the Eva. That's interesting. But yeah, I'm wondering if Masato was originally a pilot and she experienced maybe some psychological contamination, and maybe that prevented her from being a pilot in the future. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. But she knows a lot about the Evas, right? She knows an awful lot about them. And so we cut to Shinji in, I didn't know exactly I guess it was the waiting room at the hospital, but the way it's framed, these giant windows, and it almost looked like a dang church. It almost looked like a church that he was sitting in. It almost looked like the pews he's sitting in, but I'm guessing it's the waiting room at this hospital to get discharged, right? And again, he's all by himself. And he's just looking down at his arm like that was broken before. Like he's looking down because that was the arm that the angel snapped. And he just looks kind of disturbed. I don't blame him. It's like Phantom Limb. He knew that arm was broken. He's like, it felt real. And then of course, the imagery in this series is amazing. Like we cut from him with the arm that we learn later on in the episode was used as a weapon to kill the angel. And we cut from him staring down at his arm that had been broken, that was in pain. And we cut to the sun being blocked out by this giant gun. And yeah, notice of construction, guided munitions system building number 25. And yeah, and so then we get, I'm guessing this is where, near her apartment or something, because we have people's clothes hung up. And they're like, okay, keep it coming. Or maybe this is just, yeah, an apartment there where people are living there. And so once the Evas in this city are fully operational, we might have a shot. So they do establish that Tokyo 3 is going to become the fortress city. So basically it's going to become like basically a battlefield to fight the angels, essentially. Right? Okay. It's going to become a battlefield to fight the angels. And now they're in two different vehicles. And then Akagi says, do you think we can win? Ever the optimist I see. And she's like, a bright outlook is essential for people to live their lives. And I like that. I commented in the reaction. She's talking about like, oh, bright, happy outlook is all we need. You know, we need it to survive. As like weaponry and like battery weapons and stuff. And shells are being like just lifted up into the air around her as all these weapons are being put in place. She's like, we should have a sunny outlook on life. It's, oh God, it's good. I like Masato's character a lot, actually. And then Kagi says, I suppose your outlook is helpful sometimes. Later. So we go back to the cranial nerves unit, which is where Shinji had been. Okay. And he's waiting to go. And then as he's waiting, he's by himself. But then we see, I was wondering who it was, but it's Masato coming to pick him up. And that's when he sees who it is. Okay. I like this series. It does so much where there's not a word spoken, but just the way that the actors and the characters like just lift their heads up and look, you kind of just get the vibe of it. And then this elevator scene, oh my God. Like just the elevators open up and there's Jindo just staring down at him. Like just so imposing. He's so much taller than Shinji, just bearing down on him with his stare. And the angle of the elevator, you don't see the height difference, but the angle of the elevator from the floor up, just showing, like, Jindo just looks larger. He's a looming presence. And then Shinji and Masato just standing there. It's such a good shot. But Shinji can't even look at him. He's like, because he's clearly pissed. He's like, you put me in this thing you told me nothing about, and you're just now coming to see me? Like, he just can't look at his father. And God, that stare of Jindo's is terrifying. Like, just staring through his soul. And then the elevator door just shuts. Like, doesn't talk to him. Doesn't say a word. Just Shinji looks away and it shuts and that's it. And then they go. And he just keeps going up. And Masato's like, huh, interesting. And so let's question whether or not Shinji and Jindo should live separately. For the Akari's life without the other around is the norm. Yeah, no, they do not have a good relationship. Their relationship is clearly barely existent at this point. But then why did Shinji go to see him? So Shinji clearly has the estranged relationship with Jindo, right? He clearly has that relationship estranged. They can barely look at each other, much less speak. So why did he go? Why did he go when his dad called him? Well, here's the thing. The mom is not present at all. We've not seen her at all in this. And it sounds like because he moves in with Masato, she's not in the picture. So she's either dead or she's estranged too. I'm going to assume dead because you'd think that at this point he'd at least try to contact her and somebody would make mention of that. But since they don't even bring it up, I'm assuming she's dead. So he doesn't have a mother. So maybe he wanted to go see Jindo because Jindo asked and he was alone. And after all these years, because it had been 3 years since they saw each other, so Shinji was probably thinking, it's been 3 years. I'm by myself. You sent me a note asking me to come help and see you in your secret military base. So I've showed up. And the first thing I do when I get there, you don't like say hi. He doesn't say hi. Doesn't give his son a hug. They haven't seen each other in 3 years. Doesn't say hello, how you been? He gets there and he's like, you're going to get in this mech. And that's that. It's like, that, just no formality. And then in the elevator scene, he doesn't like say anything to Shinji. He just keeps going. He's totally doesn't care for Shinji. It's like, oh my God, like there's no communication there whatsoever. And it doesn't seem like that neither of them want to communicate to one another. And so somebody's like, so in other words, living together would be strange for them? Yeah, I think Masato just saw firsthand how much Shinji and Jindo are not compatible together. And so they're like, oh, his quarters will be in a room in block 6 nearby. And she's like, he's by himself? And they're like, yeah. Are you sure, Shinji? And he smiles at this. He smiles. He's like, it's fine. I prefer being alone. So that's another thing about Shinji's character. Because he actually seems pretty normal and happy in that situation. Shinji, he says he prefers to be alone. Which is interesting. Because, yeah, we're just developing his character more throughout this. So, okay. And Masato's like, and he says it's all the same to me. And Masato's like, I'm not accepting this. But also, she's been assigned to watch him. And if he's by himself, she's going to be worried about him all the time. So Akagi's like, what? And she's like, he's going to live with me. I'm going to have him live with me in my place. And now that we know what her apartment looks like, Akagi was like, that's no place for anyone to stay. But again, I think that what's interesting here is you have Shinji standing off by himself, alone, while she's on the phone with Akagi. And there seems to be this trend, right? So far in the show, that people are making decisions for Shinji. People are making decisions for him, right? Shinji has not been given a lot of free reign in this, because even when he's like, I'll go live by myself, she's like, no, you're not, you're gonna come live with me. And he's like, okay. Like when he shows up, his dad's like, you're gonna get in the back. And then he's like, no. And he's like, well, then I guess we'll throw this dead girl in there. And he's like, okay, I don't have a choice. Like Shinji he seems like he's just pulled around by a lot of people and he doesn't really know how to react to it. And this kid's still shell-shocked from all the events that's happened prior with the EVA unit. So while he's still in the state of shock, he doesn't really know how to respond to it. It is funny though. I like Masato's conversation with Akagi. I got permission. And she's like, don't worry, I won't mess around with some kid. It's like, thank God, because you were sending him photos of your cleavage in the last episode. So glad to know you weren't going to mess around with him. He's like 15. And then Akagi's like, of course you won't. Don't even suggest that. Like, I'm the only one you can mess around with. And then Masato, she needs to learn how to take a joke. You're always doing this. I feel like Masato and Akagi are a thing. But yeah. And she's like, we'll have to celebrate in style tonight. And Shinji's like, why? And she's like, the arrival of a new roommate, of course. And then, yeah, God, the transitions here. And she stocks up on groceries, but it's all like beer and junk food. There's like one thing. And so what I love about this series so far too is that we get a lot of like realistic dialogue as people walk by. And again, it's like showing, not telling. So we see Shinji's expression with her, like they're just buying all this junk. And these people walking by say, yes, we never thought this city would actually become a battlefield. Who would? My husband wants me to and our children to evacuate too. And I'm like, evacuate, huh? They call this a fortress city, but we can't count on it to protect us. And I want to make note that the moment that Shinji, he like has a very somber face, like an indifferent face, and the moment they pass by, he looks frustrated. Right? Like, I like he feels like he's failed, right? Because the people they're talking about evacuating, we get that Shinji feels like he's failed. He felt that way when he saw Rei earlier in the hospital. He's like, I saved her from getting that EVA unit, but I guess I saved the city, but what does that amount to? And then here, people are doubting that he can protect them. And there's like a little glimmer of that protagonist where he's like, well, I can protect them. But there's like a little glimmer there. But he also feels like he's being used, right? It's interesting. I get chills just thinking about what happened yesterday. Like, he's like, I was responsible for that, you know? And they don't even know. And Masato sees that too. She's like, And then they go to this place in the sunset. She's like, if you don't mind, we're going to make a quick detour. As he has her hold all the groceries. I'm like, girl, you couldn't just set that in the floorboard? There's like beef sticks and beer. And he's like, where are we going? And she's like, someplace special. And so, yeah, they watch the sunset. I love this shot of them in the sunset. It's so pretty. I love this. And then Shinji saying it's kind of a desolate city, isn't it? So again, Shinji's a little bit pessimistic. Shinji's a little bit pessimistic. He says it's a desolate city. Shinji's glass is half empty, not half full, right? Which is such a strange thing for a protagonist. He's such a different protagonist than I'm used to. But yeah, and then the skyscrapers, everything rises up. But the thing is that the city is like fortified. So it rising up. It's interesting. I do love the shot of them looking at the city in the sunset. It may be the thumbnail because it's so pretty. That shot of just their silhouettes and the city. I like it. This fortress city is built to counter and defeat the angels. Tokyo 3. Our city. Here's the thing. If you've ever watched Bungo Stray Dogs, she's kind of like Dazai. A little bit. I get a little bit of... I definitely felt like if you've ever watched Bungo Stray Dogs, in this scene where they're both looking at each other and she's like, this is our city, the city that you protected. That whole line there, it felt like Dazai talking to Atsushi at like the end of season 2 where he's like, this is the city that you helped protect. It's like, it had that same vibe. I was like sitting there reacting going, So Masato tries, she's like Dazai, and she also has like a drinking thing. So Dazai likes his sake and she likes her beer. So, you know, she tries to tell Shinji that she tries to connect Shinji to something, right? She's trying to connect Shinji to something, and the city to her. She's like, look, this is the city that you protected. Not we, but you. So it's like she's trying to give Shinji something to hold on to, like something tangible that he can connect. Because it seems like Shinji's all alone, that he just doesn't have anybody, and she's trying to give him something, right? And there's an ulterior motive to it, I'm sure. But I love that shot. And so, yeah, then we get the title card, The Beast. And that's such a weird title card at first. When I saw that pop up, I was like, there's not been anything beastly about this episode until we get to the end, right? So we go to her apartment, her really bad apartment. And she's like, I think your boxes of stuff are already here. She's like, actually, I moved here recently myself. And when she said she moved in here recently herself, I assumed that it meant that it would be fairly minimal, Like she didn't have a lot of stuff lying around. And he says, thanks for having me. And she's like, Shinji, this is your home. You don't have to say thank you. And then he crosses over into the threshold. I like that he crosses into the house. And he looks and says, I'm home. It's really cute. It's really cute. But again, Shinji is super polite. Super polite, almost to a fault. But that little blush where he's like, I'm home, is really cute. Very cute. And she's like, aw, welcome back. Katsuragi. And I like that it seems like nobody else really... I get the impression no one else lives in this apartment complex because all the other windows, there's nothing there. But she has like bushes and shrubberies and like a patio chair and like a folding chair out back and curtains. It seems like she's the only one living there, which is kind of creepy. But then, yeah, oh my God, all the beer cans, the grand old part. Oh my God. And then the Car Ox magazine, like, what is this? Like soda and all this junk, like just trash everywhere. And then like all of these liquor bottles. Oh my gosh. And she's like, oh, sorry, did you put the groceries in the fridge? Like she just is totally unaware that this mess is here. And he's like, sure. And then, yeah, it's just snacks and beer's all she's got. And he's just like, what does she do at home? And then he sees the other refrigerator, which is for Pin Pin. Okay. And I like that he asks, he's like, what's in the... She just has like car magazines everywhere. Girl is like a motorhead. She just has car magazines, which is interesting. Huh. And her room is just a mess. I hate to bother someone when they're sleeping. And he's like, sleeping? Like there's a body in the fridge? That's what I thought, that there was like a body or something or a robot in the fridge, but I didn't imagine a penguin. Would not have put that together. And so then, yeah, they just have like canned food for dinner. Canned food and beer. I'm like, I like Masato a lot because I kind of relate to her. I don't really like cooking, but I don't have just beer in my fridge. I'm like, girl, how do you stay so skinny? That's just all carbs. And then I hate stuff being like food being left all over the place. No, I'm like not messy like that at all. I could not stay in that apartment. There's no way. I'd have to start cleaning. I really thought that Shinji was going to start cleaning like right off the bat. And so Shinji has like a little bottle of water. And she's like, aren't you hungry? It's TV food, but it's pretty good. And he says, I'm not used to eating like this. And she says, well, I don't put up with fussy eaters. And he's like, that's not what I meant. He's like, oh, and she says, isn't this fun? Sharing a meal with someone. And they have to give us this like boobs and butt shot. Like, of course they do because it's 90s anime. And he's like, yes, ma'am. So it sounds like he's just not used to eating with anybody. And then they just play rock, paper, scissors together. Like, I like this little bonding moment. Like, she acts like a big sister to him. Like, she just has that big sister vibe. Like, come on, you can do this. And then she's like, I divided up our daily chores fair and square. And it looks like, okay, there's like 4 different things. I think Shinji is most of them. Because she's not getting the work done. Amazing. And she's like, this place is your home starting today. So no standing on ceremony for anything. She's trying to be like, don't be super polite. And he's like, oh, yes, ma'am. And she's like, yes, ma'am, this and yes, ma'am, that. Stop being so uptight. You're a boy, aren't you? Let's get here some backbone and confidence. So that's another thing, too. I was going to bring that up in the reaction. But this whole thing about, I'm going to put in big letters, everybody's like, be a man. That's what they keep telling him in this series. They're like, get a backbone and confidence. And I feel bad for Shinji because that's like the overarching, they're like, quit crying, stand up, do this. I'm like, dude, this kid, this barely teenager is just trying to function, has just had like a psychological event happen to him. And I feel like there's a lot of like gender pressure on him to be like, just be a man, don't cry, don't do this. And I'm like, he's just a kid. So it's not lost on me. They did that in the last episode and they're doing that in this one. And it's a very 90s trope, the whole like, be a man, big men don't cry, blah, blah, blah. But they're really doing it on Shinji in this. And then she says, hop in the tub and wash all your cares away. And we're going to talk about this, the whole thing with the tub. That's interesting. Bath is life's washing machine. And then poor Shinji, he looks up and sees all the underwear on the clothes rack. He's like, oh God. He's like, I'm stuck in this apartment with a woman. He's like, I'm not used to this. And then he looks down, there's a penguin. Pin. And it says pin with a 2 on it. So, I wonder if he's an experiment. And then, God, the illustration for the censorship where Shinji jumps out of the bathroom naked and there's the beer can that is in the way and she just grabs a beer can and I was like, oh no. And then there was a cup underneath it. So it was still censorship. Oh, that is so genius. I was like, that was great. But she's pretty unfazed by it. She's like, what? He's like, there's, and then there's the penguin. And she's like, oh, him? He's the new hot spring penguin. Okay. He just goes back in the fridge. He's like, excuse me? He's like, oh, what? She's like, his name is Pin. Our other roomie. God, and maybe you could cover up. And that's when he realizes he's naked in front of her. And then, of course, he's embarrassed. Oh, my God. And she's like, maybe I laid the cheerfulness on too thick. And I like this. He might see right through it. So Masato is hiding something, right? She's trying to be cheerful, right? But she probably knows that this is a grim situation. She's like, okay, we have these angels attacking. We have an EVA unit that's out. We have another EVA unit that's out. He's going to be the pilot, but he's already gone through all this trauma. She's trying to be nice, but she's afraid he's going to see it for what it is. And then Shinji in the bath, he says basically that Masato, I guess she's not a bad person. But I tend to remember all the bad things when I'm in the bath. That's where it got weird. I was like, really? So he remembers bad things in the bath. Okay. That's not creepy at all, friend. Why do you remember bad things in the bath? I'm like, and the only thing I could think of in the moment was that it was like him being submerged in the fluid inside the EVA. That was like being in a bath, and he had so much trauma from that, from what just happened the night or two before, that he still is having trauma about it. But he says, I tend to remember all the bad things when I'm in the bath. So this doesn't seem like something recent. It seems like it's been happening for a while. And so we had some imagery pop up, and I wanted to try to pause it. And so he sees his dad, and he sees Ray, and he sees his dad again, and Ray in pain again. And he says, Father, and Ray Ayanami. So, I don't know. He says he remembers all the bad things. I could see why he would tie Jindo to being a bad thing because of theirs, but why would he tie Ray to being a bad thing unless it was that he either doesn't know enough about her or he's associating her with getting him inside the unit? So then we cut back to this EVA unit. I'm assuming that this maybe is the 00 unit, perhaps. It doesn't look like the one that Shinji was in. It looks different. And God, the atmosphere in this show, the atmosphere where we see Jindo and Akagi in this room looking out, and it's all the greens, and it feels very 90s, it's grim. And Akagi saying, I understand you visited her at the hospital this afternoon. So he wasn't even going to see his own son. He was going to go see Ray. She'll be back on her feet in 20 days. We need to get Unit 00 up and running and ready for reactivation by then. Not Shinji's unit, but the 00 one. This will be rough on those children. Okay, and so, this is the 02 unit. Interesting. Or maybe it looks like 09, 02. No one else can pilot the EVAs. As long as they're alive, that's what they'll do. Oh! Regardless of how they feel about it? So this looks like a whole different mech. But there's that eye, right? We're going to talk about the eye, but it looks like it's there. So Jindo, our Father of the Year candidate, is saying, that, yeah, we're going to talk about this thing that only the children can pilot the Evas. And he's basically like, as long as they're alive, that's what they'll do. What? So something's happened to Shinji, like, in his past. Has he been experimented on? It wouldn't surprise me if Jindo experimented on his own kid at this point. I would not be surprised, but I'm like, has he experimented on Shinji? Clearly Rei has been experimented on, perhaps. It's probably part of this human instrumentality project. Did he sacrifice his own child? I'm getting Full Metal Alchemist, like, you know, the one guy, Frau, or whatever his name is. He was like in the first couple episodes with his daughter. I'm getting vibes about that. Tucker. I'm getting Tucker vibes, Tucker Shaw vibes with the instrumentality project. I'm like, was Shinji experimented on? And then I'm absolutely in love with this scene of Shinji in the bedroom. Again, there is no dialogue. Hardly any dialogue. It is all visual storytelling. And there's Shinji. He's got his headphones in. He's like trying to fall asleep, but he's clearly not. He's in the dark. And then you see him there lying on his belly. He can see he's looking at his backpack. There's like a cord coming out of it. There's a school transfer form for Shinji. It looks like he's playing like program number 26, and it's over 76 hours long. So I wonder what he's listening to. And he's just lying on his stomach. And then they say, true, he was put through the ringer. I don't know if he'll do it again. And this is Masato talking. Making sure he's operational is part of your job. So Masato, part of her job is to make sure Shinji can operate the Eva. So she's basically there to keep him in check because she knows that he's kind of a loner. He's quiet. He prefers to be alone. She's like, he needs to make sure that he's fully operational to pilot this Eva and stays in like a good mental state. And so her being cheerful part of the time is kind of an act, right? It's kind of not an act, but then in some regards it is. And she's like, I'm afraid. I'm not sure how I should approach him. And Akagi's like, you're whining already? You were so dramatic about taking him in. And she's like, shove it. She's like, when I said that, I saw Shinji as a means to an end. I'm no different from Ritsuko. He beat that angel. So why aren't I happy about it? So she's like, I should be happy he beat the angel, but the circumstance in which he beat it is kind of freaky. So maybe that's why she's not happy about it. And then we cut back to Shinji looking up at another unfamiliar ceiling. Another ceiling I've never seen before. No surprise, nothing about this city is familiar. Interesting. So he's like, I can't connect. Shinji's like, I can't connect to anything here. I can't connect to my father because he's totally estranged from me and he's just kind of bonkers. He's like, I can't really connect to Masato because I don't know her that well yet. I don't know any of my I don't have any bearings of where I'm at because it's all unfamiliar. He's like, I'm by myself and I just kind of am a fish out of the water. I don't have any connection to what's going on around me. And then on top of that, he has this psychological business that's about to happen. And I wanted to pause this because she says, this is your home. And I love that this sequence here where he's on his back, the book is put down and he's just staring up at the ceiling. And then we flash back. He's like, why am I even here? So it's interesting that we have Shinji trying to figure out, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Why did I come see my dad? What is the point? And I'm not saying Shinji's nihilistic, but he does have a very much like, he's like, why am I here? What's the point? He's like, I'm by myself. I don't have any sense of belonging here, right? And then we have this, we cut to this whole psychological business, and I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to slow this. I don't ever do this, but I'm going to slow this down because this imagery happens really quickly. Okay. I want to slow it down and see something. Okay. So we have like the nerves, like optic nerves. We see the angel's face. There's the face of the Eva unit. He says his eyes again, the angel. Okay. And then we cut forward and he's still just thinking about it. And we see more like cells, his eyes. And then we flash back to what happened before. Right? And so we flash back to what happened before, and I'll change it back to normal. Okay. And so the animation on this fight with the angel was great. It was incredible. I was like, oh my gosh. But we cut back to that fight with the angel. And then it just looks like blood splurting out, but it's just the liquid and everything. And then everything goes bonkers. The operational integrity is compromised. There's a report. The synchronization is inverting. They're like, shut down the systems. They can't shut it down because the signal's not getting in to shut it down. Like, they're basically they just have to leave Shinji there. And I like that Masato's like, what's Shinji's status? And they have like the motor cortex, sensory cortex, parietal lobe, hippocampus, and then the y'all know what I mean. But they've got all the different parts there, and it just all shuts down. It's just an unknown, zero biometrics. Okay. The unit's shut down. And so Masato is like, I guess that's it. Abort the operation, and pilot rescue has top priority. Because I wonder if she was a pilot, if she knows what that's about. Emergency plug eject now. And they're like, we can't eject the plug. The system is completely unresponsive. And she's like, well, then we can't get him out. So what do we do now? And inside this Eva unit, it's like Shinji just glowing in this translucent, contrasting purple hues, like he's just has a psychic break. And then the mouth of the Eva opens up and it completely works on its own. It's gone berserk. And it's just like he's running on instinct. It's the beast. And it's just like the entire operational unit is just running on instinct. And like flips through the air and kicks the angel. And it just rips its arms off and then like cracks it open. And it's acting like Shinji could barely get it. Shinji could barely get it to walk. And now it's just like totally doing all these acrobatics. And the one guy that's with Gendo says, we've won. Oh my gosh. And it's like an instinctual monster. And it tries to put up a barrier and then it like takes and corrodes it. Okay. Just like rips it open and then just destroy it and just pummels it. It's like just raw primal energy. It's crazy. And just sits there and beats the snot out. And so it looks like its eye has a dome and a force field over it. And then, okay. And then it's definitely got some like organic mass to it because it like reshapes itself and it just basically self-destructs. And somehow, as it self-destructs in this beautiful green blaze, the Eva unit's not affected at all. And neither is Shinji, but the whole eye was open, so you'd think, it's crazy. And the thing that got me like just kind of sickened by it all is that everyone is looking in horror at what they've just seen. Akagi is like, that's the Eva's true form, true nature. So Akagi and Masato are apparently like, okay, this is what the Evas are capable of. This is their true form. And Gendo is so pleased. Ugh. No, thank you. No, thank you. And Shinji is just, and he's just sitting there like, oh. And it says, circuits connected, system is back online, the graph ring is normal. He's just sitting there like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. What happened? Okay. Expedite recovery. And so here's the thing. He's standing next to, this is the creepy part. He's standing next to a skyscraper that has the windows, the panels on there that are reflective. They're like mirrors. And he looks over and the head falls. So the head of the Eva falls off, right? The head of the Eva falls off, but he's still there. And so he looks over. The hell? there is something inside of it. It like has there's this, it looks almost organic, but it has all these wires and things pumping into it, and it's like the jaw, it looks kind of like the head of a whale, but the front of it, the head of it, the head of it, I'm gonna try to draw it over here. So it has like this head, right? It has like this head, and then there's the jaw with the teeth, right? The teeth around it. And then at the top of it, though, there's like, it looks like the nose, and there's this thing that looks like the eye, and that's where we see the eye come out of it. But the top of it, it looks almost like one of the angel heads. It looks like almost one of the angel heads. But it's this thing that looks back at him, and he stares at it, and it's just like a being inside of it. And then its eye forms, like an eyeball forms, and it looks back at Shinji. It opens up its eye and looks at him. And then it snaps back. So, did they just inject Shinji into the brain of this monster? Into the brain of this alien form? Did they just inject Shinji into its brain and he's psychically linked up with this monster? Is that, because there's something organic inside the Evas, and it's weird. But I'm like, they had an entry port. So it's like they just injected Shinji into the brain of this being, and he's psychically linked up at it, and they're using it as a weapon. It sounds very similar to the angels. What? And then probably my favorite part of this whole episode is that we just had that montage, that battle, that WTF-ness, and it cuts back to him on the bed. And this is so telling of his character. Instead of him freaking out, instead of him like screaming or having this visceral reaction like any of us would probably have, instead he's just sitting on his back, and he just slowly, methodically rolls over to his side. Like just rolls over slowly. Oh my God. Like just sitting there like, what do I do? And then Masato, she comes in the room and she's like, I forgot to tell you something. She's like, people will thank you for what you did today. You should be proud. Good night, Shinji. Keep it up. Keep it up! Don't die! Keep it up! So, you may be getting injected into this alien life form that's psychically linking up with you. Just keep up the good work. Oh. Wow, this episode, this series so far, it has just like got me. This series has just got me. I'm amazed. So yeah, again, Shinji is really interesting. He's very, very interesting. And I don't blame him for being shell-shocked from all this. It's traumatic. But his methods of coping and dealing with this trauma are interesting. And then Jindo is mysterious. I'm not still sure how to read Shinji because we don't see him happy very often. We just see like little blips of him being happy. But for the most part, he's just kind of shell-shocked and distant from everybody. He may be involved in some messed up project, it sounds like. And these angels sound like something just equally messed up. So I really like Masato's character. I like her a lot. And Akagi's growing on me too. They seem like two characters that are doing their job, but they are, at least Akagi is questioning Jindo on the ethical and moral issues of, using these children possibly as, injecting them into monsters. We don't know. But the fact that it can grow an eye, holy cow. So yeah, that's episode 2. We're just 2 episodes in. I'm glad I have Whiteboard Kun. I'm glad that Whiteboard Kun is getting use outside of Attack on Titan. It's very relieving. So yeah, I don't want any spoilers, but I am curious to know your thoughts down below because this episode, the imagery, the twist of it, we're only 2 episodes in, y'all, so I'm excited. But yeah, so I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 3 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Bye.